There we go. That worked perfectly. So, welcome to the National Association of Japanese Canadians Endowment Fund Information Session. Want to welcome you. I am speaking from the traditional and unceded territories of the Semiahmoo, Katsi, Coquitlam, Kwantlen, Kikite, and Tawasin First Nations. And I raise my hands to all the traditional and territories from across Canada where you're joining us. And if you can reflect for a second and give thanks for those territories as well. So we're very pleased to have this information session. I'm going to just let you know that the format of the session, first I'm going to introduce the members of the Endowment Fund Committee, and then each member of the Endowment Fund Committee is going to provide some information about the Endowment Fund, and then after that we're going to have a question and answer session. So this is being recorded, so you can refer back to it, and we'll also let you know about the resources that we have on the National Association of Japanese Canadians website, and we'll provide those links to you as well. So it's my pleasure to introduce our amazing Endowment Fund Committee. And these folks have been working hard to make sure that we get the information out to all of you who are interested in applying for a grant. First off, if you can maybe give a little wave when I say your name, is Sarah Matsushita, Yukari Peerless, and Sue Doi. So thank you so much, and we are going to start off with an introduction to the Endowment Fund, so I'll pass that over to Sue. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorene. So the Endowment Fund was created as part of the 1998 Japanese Canadian Redress Agreement, which acknowledged the unjust treatment of Japanese Canadians by the government during and after World War II. The funds were created to generate income that is distributed as grants through the Cultural Development Fund and the Sports Education Arts Development Program. And Sarah is going to take you through a little bit more detail on the Cultural Development Fund, and Yukari is going to take us through a little bit more information on the what we call the SEED program after a little bit later in the program. I'm really excited to be able to share with you that with the grants that we do this year, we will have distributed $1 million in grant money over the last, 30-ish years to educational, social, and cultural activities and programs that contribute to the well-being of the Japanese Canadian community or promote human rights. Just a little tiny snippet of logistics. The deadline for applications is June 30th. If you're submitting online, that's at midnight Pacific time on June 30th. So the evening of June 30th at, I guess, 11:59. If you're submitting on paper, then it needs to be received to the NAJC offices in Winnipeg by June 30th. And the application form can be found on the website. And you do have the option of doing either the electronic version, which is, I think, a Google Doc, or a paper version. We will consider them equally. And I think Sarah is up next.
Sure. Thanks very much, Sue. And hi, everyone. It's great to be here. And speaking to the Cultural Development Fund, this is certainly a fund that is to promote and showcase and develop Japanese Canadian culture and heritage. It's open to organizations, either community or cultural organizations, and also open to individuals. And thinking about the organization side, certainly there's a preference for organizations with a history of involvement with the JC community or promoting Japanese Canadian culture. And then on the individual side, just two sort of small but important parts to be considerate of the Canadian citizenship, rather, and also to be a permanent resident of Canada. So some small points there. But thinking about this fund really in terms of promoting and showcasing Japanese Canadian culture, looking back at past projects, a really rich history of a great variety and creative ways to do this. Some examples of past projects include theater performances, graphic novels, virtual reality experiences, even walking tours or education around JC internment, which is really important. And I also really appreciate too that there are showcasing whether it's Japanese Canadian elders or young people from the communities. And also some of that cross-generational projects as well are really neat ways to showcase Japanese Canadian culture. So we really encourage you to be creative and to think about ways to really engage people in different ways. One important point for this fund, maximum grants will be $5,000. And the June 30th deadline also applies to this fund. So that's a bit about the fund. And over to you, Yukari.
Great, thank you so much. Next, I will talk about the SEED program. SEED stands for Sports Education and Arts Development Grant. And this one is a little bit different from what Sarah would just explain. This one is more for individuals. And this fund is to promote athletic, artistic, and academic development of Japanese Canadians. And it's also to enrich Japanese Canadian culture and community within the Canadian society. And it helps you fund in the form of grants to Japanese Canadian individuals to furthering their studies, trainings, and skills, but it's not meant to replace scholarships or bursaries. And this grant, if it's in for sports category, this is intended to provide assistance to in further training or development in the sports where the individual has demonstrated achievement at the provincial or national levels. In the education category, this is for example, specialized studies. And it's not really meant to for undergraduate or general study programs. That's kind of important to remember. And for arts category, this is more to for specialized training or development in the visual, performing, or literary arts. And this grant is maximum grant is $2,500. And the eligibility for this grant is this is what you must be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident. So Shinijusha, like myself, is eligible. So that's great. And priority will be given to first-time applicants without exception. Previous grant recipient may also, excuse me, reapply in a similar endeavor only if, in the case of sports, the recipient has shown significant improvements, either with a substantial and quantifiable rise in national or international rankings, or has been promoted to a higher level of competition. Like you're going to the, I don't know, Olympics or competing in different country or something like that. Or in the case of education or focus studies, the studies or programs are significantly and obviously different from the original studies or program. In the case of visual, performing, or literary arts, the grant request applies to a significantly different project. So you cannot kind of repeat the same project. And as Sue already mentioned, but deadline for the application is June 30th this year. So that's important to remember. And that's it for the SEED program.
Excellent. So those are presentations. What I might do actually right now is I'll just show you, some of you may have already been on the website, but let's just go to the website. And then that way you can see. So if, okay, hang on. Sorry, I should go for the home page. Okay, so this is the NAJC.ca. So this is the home page. And when you go to the home page, the menu that's on the top, if you look at Fund and Awards, and it's the second one down, NAJC Endowment Fund. If you click on that, that brings you to the Endowment Fund page. And so we're going to be posting the recording here for the info session. And we have a FAQs, frequently asked questions, and we also have some social media, because one of the requests we have is for recipients to help us promote the Endowment Fund. So there's a description of the Cultural Development Fund and the SEED program. And then scrolling down, so it gives you some basic information. And here is the application form. So the online application form that you can just fill in the information and proceed page to page and then submit. Or there is the PDF form that you can print off. And so again, that's the cultural development, and the SEED also has that as well. And then just a few notes, and then also you can look at past Endowment Fund recipients at the red button at the bottom, right there. So that's just a little glimpse of the website if you haven't seen it. So all the information will be there. Okay, so now the exciting part, the question and answer session. So if you have any general type questions about the Endowment Fund or the two specific programs, please either write it in the chat, or you can take yourself off mute. Again, it is being recorded, so if you don't want to be recorded, please put it in the chat. Otherwise, you can take yourself off mute and direct your questions to our Endowment Fund Committee. Is that Cam? Did you want to ask a question?
May I?
Yes, go ahead.
I am not a member of the Nikkei community, obviously, but I'm a member of the Chinese Canadian community. Part of the application section says, please provide contributions to the Japanese Canadian community. So obviously I can't. Well, at least I don't think I can say that. I have done a presentation on the Moose Jaw Hostel to the Japanese Canadian community here in Regina, but that is as much as it has gone. So to say I've contributed might be a bit of a reach. So what kind of, I mean, I've written a couple of articles for Nikkei Images, but otherwise, I can't really say I've made any contribution per se.
Well, I think you've mentioned some contributions. So as always with an application, provide as much, fill it out as completely as possible, and fill out as much information. So definitely wanting to see, you know, everything from being a member or being part of an organization, Japanese Canadian organization, but also interested if you've been working with the community or doing presentations and so forth. So put as much information as available, and that will be considered when you do your application. So
okay,
it's really about your application, the importance, because what we're looking at is, does it fulfill that contributing to the Japanese Canadian, say, history, learning the history or the cultural, artistic, etc. So we're really looking at what the project intends to accomplish. So it won't disqualify you, so it's not that you have to be a member, but we're saying, though, give us as much information as possible.
okay, thank you.
Thanks for your question. That's great.
Yeah, no, thanks for that's a good question. So anything else? One thing I just want to reiterate, the committee members have mentioned about the deadline. So I just want to reiterate, because I know in previous forms of this application we had a different kind of time and date, and so it is June 30th, and we're operating by Pacific time, midnight. So wherever you're located, adjust. It has to be in received by. Definitely a little bit quicker with the online, and if you are going to mail, that's perfectly fine as well, but then it has to be in the Winnipeg office by the midnight deadline of June 30th. So just want to point that out, because some folks that maybe had applied for it some years ago might be thinking of the old time of how we had set it up. I should point out too that you can't see him because his camera's off, but you might see his name there. Kevin Okabe is the executive director for the National Association of Japanese Canadians, and he is here providing some support for us. He's doing kind of double duty, that's why his camera's off. But he still can hear us. So thank you, Kevin.
Hello, my name is Jason Mahara. Just hoping question for you.
Sure, Jason, go ahead.
So just trying to get an understanding of the differences with the cultural section of the fund. And the reason that I originally signed up for this is, so we operate a judo club, Ishikawa Judo, which is out of the Nikkei Center. And we're a very small club, and we're starting to expand our group. And especially with COVID and all these things that have been going on, we've been having difficulties with space and funding and all that. And from a cultural aspect, we've got these ideas and plans for next year. Well, fingers crossed next year, depending on COVID, once things move, and expanding some of our programming within the organization. And part of what we're looking at as well is seeing from a cultural aspect. Of course, judo is a very big part of history of Japan and Japanese Canadians. How that fund might, if possible, from a cultural aspect, because you said from a seed portion that's for individual only, versus the cultural one, which is I guess possible for an association. If we gear our application towards some of the cultural aspects of how that sport can be connected to culture, is that what we're looking for, or try to get an aspect of how that would fall in?
Yes, exactly. That's right on. Seed is individual, and the cultural would be groups or associations.
Okay. All right. We'll got some plans. We've got, so obviously June 30th is a little times away, so we'll figure out how the application for us will work. And just I appreciate the info session today. So thank you.
Oh, that's great. And this is an annual fund, so we do it every year.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So maybe what I'll do, unless somebody has another question, why don't I pull up the frequently asked questions, and maybe that'll spur some thoughts as to.
Lorene, it looks like Leanne might want to ask a question. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No, go ahead. I don't mind interrupting, Lorene. Go ahead.
No, you're not interrupting.
Oh, thanks so much. Hi, my name is Leanne. I'm here with Sen and Nico from Matsushita. We're a Japanese Canadian writing circle. And one of the things we were wondering was if we're applying as an organization, do we have to be kind of like a very highly structured organization with bylaws and a board, or we're a bit more new?
Well, we need to be have the reassurance that you have the capacity to do the project you're proposing.
Right.
But yeah, there's no formal structure. We just need to know how, this is what your goal is. How are you going to achieve it?
Okay, that's great. Thanks so much.
No, that's a great question. I'm wondering, Lorene, too, if thinking about the COVID context, I know that's on part of our FAQs, but I wonder if you could speak to that in terms of folks thinking, what if I propose a project and things don't go as planned because I have restrictions with COVID? We could speak to what we already have planned as a committee to be able to support those projects.
So why don't I actually just pull it up, since it's already outlined in here. So very good point. Thanks, Sarah. So one of the things that we have considered is, we're in a pandemic. Things aren't going exactly as planned. Okay, so FAQs. And so we recognize that even with the best of plans, sometimes things happen, like a delay. So what we've done is we've got a process, which is this question here: what if there's a delay? So COVID, of course, is on everyone's mind, and so we have actually set up a possibility of an extension of up to 18 months if your project's delayed because of the pandemic. So for an example is one was a film project. And there were various players across Canada, but with lockdowns and restrictions on travel and safety concerns, not being able to fly people around and meet with people and filming. So that kind of delay. So we do have that in mind. As with anything, if you're accepted, there's an agreement you're signing. So there's an expectation, a timeline. But if something happens, we understand. But you need to let us know as soon as possible about any delays and get prior approval. So this we would consider an extension, but you need to contact us first, review what is going on, what the plans are, and then we can look at an approval for an extension. If you this grant is, we do it annually. If you anticipate at this point you're not going to be able to work on your project for another year, then I would say then consider applying next year, if you already know that there's going to be. But if there is a plan for your project that you can start now and hopefully get through all of it, then feel free to go ahead, and we will look if we will consider if there is. Sorry, I'm just checking the chat to see if I missed anything. Then we can consider it, and that's one of the questions addressed in the frequently asked questions.
Good, thanks, Lorene. And I see that Carly has a question too about expectations for when projects should be completed, if that's 2021, as per a usual schedule.
Sorry, it doesn't like opening up the chat when I'm sharing a screen.
No, sure. I'm happy to repeat that.
There we go. So what we're looking for is the project to be completed by the say spring of the following year, and getting in the final report. So some people have been able to work through the year, for example, last year I should say, work through the year, and then with the pandemic not able to complete, and then that's when we've been looking at the extensions. For the Oh, and then just a bit of clarification on the cultural development under the organization category. Okay, sorry, and if I've missed anyone, because as you know with Zoom, it's kind of hard to scroll back and forth and see everybody's hands. So if I missed you, then just speak up. Okay, so I'm going to go back, because it wouldn't let me see the chat. I'm going to go back now to, maybe I'll just run through really quickly the frequently asked questions so you have an idea. So when is the deadline? So we talked about that. How do I apply? We talked about that on the website, the different. And we talked a little bit about the differences, cultural development, SEED. So there's a brief review there. Eligibility. There's also, and more description also on the website. And again, this question about the support letter, for those who are familiar with the fund from years past, we used to have a requirement for a support letter, so we don't have that requirement anymore. But just to let you know that your contact information may be shared with your local NAJC member organization, because we have member organizations like chapters across Canada. And the expectation is that you connect with the organization, because this strengthens the ties within the community. It's also a way to get support. So for example, if you haven't been involved with, say you're in Victoria, and you haven't been in touch with the Victoria Nikkei Cultural Society there, then it's a great way to introduce yourself and let them know about your project. Then they can provide some support, like they also do like newsletters to their members in the area, and you can get support that way, especially if it's something where you want an audience to, buy your book, watch your film, watch the production. Then it's really great to have the member organization on board, that they can, and they might have ideas too and other ways to support. They might have connections. So it's just a great way. that you support the local member organizations and have that contact. Another question that's come up before, so the fund's not for, it's not a wage subsidy or for living expenses, but if the applicant's work is integral to the project, so for instance, it might be an artist who's applying and it's a company of artists, so there's artists that are getting paid for their work, that compensation. So we would consider that, just make it clear, noting what it is that the contributions are. And that would be covered in when you're doing your budget and you're describing what the funding is required. So one of the popular questions, when do I get the money if approved? So once the application's been approved and we get an agreement to make sure we're clear about everyone's responsibilities, then we would forward the funds to the applicant. Do I have to do a report?
Actually, just Lorene on that. So the applications are due at the end of June. We will likely be reviewing all of the applications in July, like we did last year, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
We then make recommendations to the board for their August meeting, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so likely people wouldn't be receiving funds until September-ish. Is that right? Or maybe Kevin, can you weigh in?
Yeah,
Just to give
approximately.
people an idea of when they might actually have a
Yep.
check in their hands.
And actually, that's a good point. So that's the process. So as Sarah said, the Endowment Fund Committee vets the applications, and then we don't make, we do recommendations, but we are not the approving body. The approving body is the National Executive Board of the National Association of Japanese Canadians. So that's why there's that structure where we have to put it through to them, get their approval, and then, so yeah, it would be just with that timeline, approximately September. So then it would go to the person, then sign the agreement, and then things flow after that. Good point. Thanks, Sarah. I know sometimes we get caught up in the process. It's like we know what's going on, so but you don't know. So it's always good to review that. Okay, and then reporting. So what we expect is a final report and budget accounting and copies of receipts within 3 months of completing the project. And that's sort of the formal process. But again, as we had discussed, if there is a delay, going to be a delay, as we talked about a possible extension, please advise us right away. Oh, can I get my committee? Can you, it doesn't like to open the chat when I'm sharing a screen. Can you check the chat? Because I think
Sure. No, I've just been checking and I think we're good.
Okay.
Nothing new for now. I know that folks are happy to get a bit more clarification. So yeah, that's it for now. I'll keep watching the chat.
Thank you so much. What is required when promoting my project? What we'd like to do is have you acknowledge the contribution that you got funding from the National Association of Japanese Canadians, the Endowment Fund. So if you're doing promotional materials, YouTube, brochures, whatever you're doing, to please acknowledge us. And then also let us know too, like provide a copy of your news release or the copy of your book or whatever the publication, because then what we can do too is help promote you. So for example, one of our past ones has done the book, and so we posted information about how you can purchase the book and give more information. What else? Oh, yes, so we'll provide you with the NAJC logo and then also our website address, which is pretty simple, najc.ca. And then the other thing is we've just completed some social media graphics, and I can show that to you in a minute. But anyway, it's some really very convenient for you. So the button I clicked for FAQs, there was a button next to it that says social media. If you click on that, and we've got some great graphics that are all just ready to prepare, or sort of prepared, so ready to use. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So it's all sized for the appropriate platform you're using. And then that helps us as well. And because as you heard from the beginning, that the NAJC has received this responsibility from the redress funds to support and develop our community. So we want to make sure that people know about accessing this fund. So we really appreciate that.
Can I just add to that as well? Sorry, Lorene, just something that I think is important as we've talked about as a committee, that we are really keen to connect with folks, organizations, individuals all across Canada. And we have noticed in looking back at past recipients that we certainly are able to reach folks in bigger cities, Canadian cities. We certainly, if you know of other organizations or people or groups, we really are trying to actively promote and engage so that folks know about the Endowment Fund who are outside big cities or in more northern or rural areas, and especially on the East Coast as well. So any help you can have in terms of posting on your social channels is really helpful to spread the word.
Yes, good point. This question we kind of answered already, which is where can I see examples of past grant recipients? And it's actually on that page at the bottom where you can click to see that. We covered the delay. What if I want to change my project? So you're awarded a grant based on your application. So the funds awarded specifically for the purposes that you outlined in your application. So again, if there's something that has occurred, then please advise us. If there's proposed changes, if it fits within still the parameters of the application, then it might be possible to get that prior approval and then to make the changes. But generally speaking, we wouldn't, if funds are awarded for a specific project, then we can't just switch it over to a different project. But there might be some changes that still fit within the original intent of the project, and that might be something that we can say, yes, we approve that, and then we would give you approval for that. So again, if you have any questions, then you would contact us. And then another question comes up. So for some of you that have received a grant before and you're thinking, can I get another grant? Yes, you may apply. So one of the things though that when we mentioned about the final report, that is one of the requirements that if you receive funding for a previous project, then we need to know that you've submitted the final report, we know the outcome, and we need that before we would consider a new application. A question, if it's a previous project that you received funding for and you want more money for it, you're not eligible, to apply for additional funding to a previous project. But a new project, yes. So that's some of the questions that we have in our frequently asked questions. Come back here. Okay, good. Glad it's helpful. Any other thoughts?
Thanks. I'm here with Leanne and Sen. I just have a follow-up question to sort of like the individual versus organization application. Because we're kind of a collective of 3 people, would you be open to us sort of submitting each of our CVs, or would you prefer that we just choose sort of one representative and kind of maybe just talk about how the other folks will play into the project?
Probably I would say give us if there's 3 people involved and your background is integral to this project, then it would be helpful to get that information. So we don't have to guess and go, oh, is she the one that has... It won't hurt you. You're not penalized, so...
Okay, great. Yeah, okay, so I'm just looking at like filling out the application. It only kind of gives like 1 slot, so we'll just kind of put each of our names sort of as one submission. All right, thank you so much. That's really helpful.
Well, we'll also remember.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so it's good that you came today and that you asked questions, because we'll remember.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
But yeah, you wouldn't get penalized. We wouldn't go, oh, she submitted 3 CVs. I don't like that. No.
We do find that background information quite helpful, and we do compile that for every application. And it is really helpful for us to see the scope of work, and we certainly recognize that there are more informal groups applying. So the more information is helpful for us. Yeah, so please feel free to include those attachments.
Definitely. As the members have said, it just makes it that much easier because we do our best, but we can't read people's minds, and it's hard sometimes going, did they mean that, or do they mean? It makes it harder to assess it if we're not clear who's doing what.
Right. All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Definitely want to echo that. I'm so glad that you're all here and that you are asking your questions.
Or it's Jason again.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jason.
So thinking about this as individual for the seed application. So my daughter is in the provincial team for British Columbia. And is there a minimum age on the application? She's currently 14, but the provincial team does travel, and there's a lot of expenses in that travel. So is there a minimum age for the application?
Actually, I'm gonna get Kevin to check. I can't.
Oh, whoops. I think Jason we've lost connection.
Oh, Jason dropped off, but that's okay. We'll
yeah, but
answer
it's a good question.
Recording, and then he can catch up. Kevin, can I ask for your help on this one? Because we've never, or at least I haven't come across everyone that we've come across have been adults.
I don't really, I don't believe there's an age restriction necessarily. It's more or less the level that the person is at in terms of their development and stuff. I do believe that in the past we had supported junior high performance athletes.
Okay.
So I don't think that's an issue. Yeah.
Okay. I don't recall an age restriction, but as I said, the only ones I've dealt with have been adults. But as Kevin pointed out, it really is about the higher level. So that you're in the international or the Canadian, so that higher level of sports, etc. that we're looking at, or the specialized training. So it's not your usual undergrad or usual regular courses. So there's a question in the chat: is the work of translation of a play from Japanese to English considered to be an arts educational project that is applicable to this fund? It could be considered under cultural development because if there's some significance, because what we're looking at is enriching Japanese Canadian community. So if the work that's going to be done contributes to that, then if you can explain it, describe it, show us, and then we can look at that. So sometimes there's like seminal works that the translation helps to greater understanding, etc. So again, we're giving you some answers, but we obviously can't tell you exactly on your specific project, but we'll answer as best we can. But it will come down to that we receive all your application, following all those parameters, the rules, and then reviewing it, and then getting that picture of the project. And then depending on the projects that we receive, then we will go through them and evaluate based on that benefit to the Japanese Canadian community, for example. So fulfilling that mandate of the grant. If there were a lot of grants that exceed what we're able to issue for grants, and actually that's a question. So if, say, somebody applied on a particular project, but they weren't successful in a particular year, they can look at applying the following year. And we've had that happen where one year there was a lot of applications, and they were all good, but they were ranked, and so some folks did not get a grant for that particular year. But then one specifically I know asked the question, can I apply the following year? And he did apply the following year, and he was successful. So if that's a question. So sorry, the question, once the translation is done, can we show the play in the following year? Is it considered to be also an arts project? I would say that that's your project that you're proposing, that you're translating plus you're doing a performance. So if there's different parts to your project, so sometimes when it's a historical legacy kind of project, there might be one part where there's research and then the second part is the actual monument, etc. exhibit. So that would be one project that you would put together. Jason, sorry, yeah, we saw that you lost your connection. So we're not aware of any age restrictions. So what we'd really look at is in the application, is it a higher level of, I think you said it was sports, right? So a higher level. So not just a regular school undergrad. It has to be somebody in that higher standing, right? International, national. And then we'd look at it, we'd take that approach of what is it.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. These are really good questions. Thank you, folks. And this will also help anyone else who wasn't able to make the information session, because that's sometimes always the way, right? You're in a group and you're thinking, maybe I shouldn't ask that. And then when you do ask it, I found that also people go, oh, thank goodness you asked that. I was thinking that too.
Hi, I have a question.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Hide. This might only apply to me, but I'm a permanent resident of Canada, and there's a question about, do you consider yourself Japanese Canadian? So I was wondering if like the NAJC has their own definition of what being Japanese, like a definition of checking yes or no for that question.
No, it's how you self-identify. We're not going to do a DNA test on you.
Okay, thank you.
And sorry, I think there was, seemed to be missing a, hang on, did I miss a question? Oh, yeah, and then just to clarify, so Canadian citizens or permanent residents, that's the status that you have to have. I think I got everybody's question. Michiko, I did answer the question saying that translation you could apply, and then you added on about showing the play. So if that's what I was saying, that appears to be a multi kind of part project. You would describe that, what you're doing. So the example
questions, but I have an additional question. Can I ask?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I wonder whether a survey of Japanese Canadians to be considered.
Oh, sorry, you cut out.
I would like to know about the attitude towards multiculturalism in Canada, especially among the newer Japanese people who will live here permanently, either whether they became citizens or married to a Canadian people. I just wondered if I would like to do some research on that. That's considered to be a candidate for research grant.
You certainly can apply. You have to describe what is it you're doing, what
exactly
you hope to achieve, who
yes.
would benefit from the work, the research you would do, how, right? Where would this research be shared out, contributed?
Right. I understand.
Yes, we've had different projects. And also if you want to look at some of the past projects, you can go to the website and take a look there.
That's a great idea. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And members of the committee, if there's anything that you want to add to any of the questions, or sorry, add to the answers, I guess, to the questions, anything else that you thought of that might be useful, please feel free to jump in. Just do a quick scan.
I guess one question I can anticipate that folks may have is once they start really digging into the application, if they have more detailed questions, what would they do with them then? And so maybe either Lorene or Kevin could answer that.
So what I'll do, there is the email on the website, but questions can be directed to national@najc.ca. So I'm just putting that in the chat there. And it also has it on the website or the application form or both. Yes, so if you do come across something and you want clarification, please let us know so that we can clarify and help you with the process of applying. We're not trying to make it tricky. We just want really good information so that we can understand. So we can kind of get into your head and go, okay, what is this? Who's doing it? How is this going to benefit the community? Where is this going out to? Or for the seed? So how is this a higher level or specialized, right? Who's this person? What have they done? So we just need the better idea of it. So please give us that information so that we can look at it and do that assessment. And I must say, and the committee will agree with me, we really, it just warms our heart to see the applications and see all the Japanese Canadians and folks working on Japanese Canadian projects and doing so much to develop themselves or the community. And so we're really thrilled about it, that there's so much going on out there. And that's one of the other reasons why, as Sarah said, help us get out to those smaller communities, because a lot of times it is just, Vancouver, Toronto, and then everybody else kind of doesn't get all the information sometimes. And we know there's work happening across Canada. And as I said in the beginning too, just even the connections. Maybe it's a smaller community that's, maybe it's Port Hardy, so they're not really close to Victoria, but still they could have a connection with Victoria. Sorry, I'm picking on Victoria, but but anyway, it's just a neat way to build those connections and get more people to know about your project, so you get support, and then it's a great way for us to promote all the good work that's going on to help promote Japanese Canadian community. So there's such a benefit. But yeah, it is just so people are so creative too. So we just love hearing about all these great ideas about how someone's going to tell the story of Japanese Canadians or an artistic interpretation. And yeah, so we really do love it when you give us that information and we're reading your applications. Okay, I don't want to prolong it because I know everybody's busy, and I know for folks that are out east, you're always 3 hours ahead, so it's a longer night for you. So I don't want to drag this on, but I'll just quickly scroll through if there's anyone that has any sort of last minute questions. I'm not seeing anyone. So I want to thank my committee, Sue, Yukari, and Sarah. I love working with this committee. Great group, and we're excited to see your applications. So please complete those applications and get it to us. Thank you to Kevin Okabe, our executive director, who provides a lot of support to us. And thank you to all of you. Thank you for coming to this and being better prepared and asking your questions. And as I said, we're going to have the recording, so if you know of other folks that you want to let them know about it, we will be posting the recording. We have all the information on the website, the frequently asked questions, and you also know that you can contact us too if anything else comes up. So get those applications done and make sure they're into us, right? Before midnight Pacific time, June 30th. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Good night.
Thanks very much, everyone.
lots of thank yous in the chat.
Have you stopped recording?
I will stop it now.